Recently, as I have been recovering, I've been exploring a part of my practice that most people don't know about, Kemeticism. I figured, as a nice break from the heathen and Sumerian content I normally produce, that I'll provide a Kemeticism 101 series. And what better place to start with such a series than what is a Nachir, or Nachirat? What do the ancient Egyptians mean when they use this word? Well, to begin with, we are not completely in the dark as to what Nachir means. In fact, unlike what most people tend to think, Egyptian as a language did not really die. Rather, like other languages, it changed and became a language known today as Coptic. Coptic itself did sort of die as a spoken language, but remains in use by the Coptic Church, and thus is pretty well known. In Coptic, the word for God is Nute. We know that Nute means God because it is used to translate the Greek Theos, which means God in Greek. So, in biblical context, therefore, we can conclude that at some point, both terms were seen as synonymous enough that one could stand for the other, and hence the translation God. As a side note for the more read up among you, you might be wondering why I say Nachir or Nachirat instead of the word nature, or I guess it would be Nacherat or Nacheret. Whatever. The reason is that where possible, I use the reconstructed form of the ancient Egyptian rather than the anglicized form, unless I know the Coptic, and even then, sometimes I may choose the reconstructed form. For example, I will use Rusat or Ese instead of Isis, or actually, that's a Latin form, Isis. Ri instead of Ra, and Jahauti instead of Thoth, etc. Getting back to the main point, while we know that we can translate Nachir, Nachirat as God, or well, goddess, this does little to tell us of how the Egyptians actually fought, or what they actually meant when they used the term, outside of a Christian context. Perhaps looking at the hieroglyph will tell us more. The first person to interpret this figure was Champollion, of famous renown for translating hieroglyphs. He thought that it was an axe. One problem with that, this is what an axe looks like in ancient Egypt. Notice that the handles lack wrapping, and that the axe looks pretty different. Furthermore, the further back in time we go, the less and less the sign looks like anything resembling an axe. Instead, it seems more likely that the glyph represents a staff robed in cloth, representing the presence / an attribute of a particular Nachir. Now, there are two other signs. These two signs are in addition to a whole list of signs that refer to particular gods. What this shows us is that the Egyptian concept of Nachir, Nachirat is not static, but rather dynamic. The gods take many forms and actions. Their attributes are around us omnipresently. In fact, to reinforce this idea, a common way to name local deities was to name them he or she of place X, where X could be anything. For example, I live near a lake, and so I called the spirit / goddess of that lake as Tahone, literally Coptic for she of the lake. The forest is called Tayashin, she of the forest. Now, of course there are some other terms for the gods that need to be covered. Let's start with the term Ba. The Ba of any entity refers generally to the person's personality, / will in some cases. With deities, this Ba can manifest, that is, Khajah, which means that an efficacy emanates from the deity. For example, the Ba of a god may manifest fortune for a particular worshipper, such as, say, extra money for the merchant, or maybe even winning the lottery for another devotee. In art, the Ba is typically represented as a bird person. Another term is Sichim, which is generally translated as power. Sichim is the impersonal power that is attached to each god. It is, so to speak, the might of a god, their capabilities. In the New Kingdom time period, it comes to mean an image of a god. My personal preference is to think of it as the power emanating from their form. The distinction can sort of be illustrated in the story of Arjuna and Krishna. When Arjuna asks Krishna to see his full form, Krishna shows him, and this power that emanates forth is overwhelming and unrelatable. This power is what I see as Sichim. And with that, this wraps up my first video in this series. If you would like to see more, please like, share, subscribe, and join my Discord for more interesting conversations. Also, thank you to Ptahmassu for the art. And until next time.